Hey, chat, the old heads mad, man. Nah, I'm chilling. Listen, Uncut Hoops decided to upload a video called We Done With the 90s. A lot of people have been uploading videos about We Done With the 90s, man. Shout out to Kenny, shout out to Low. I want to watch this. I want to watch a old head's perspective. And from my understanding, Uncut Hoops is more so lenient towards the old head perspective on this whole thing. We just had a great discussion about this on the Let's Keep It a Buck podcast last night as well, as to essentially who started it, the chicken or the egg. Which one came first? The new heads, the new kids coming down the block, gassing up these players too much, or the old heads coming in just hating on the new generation, and now the new heads have to, fight back. Who threw the first punch? But yeah, let me know what y'all think in the comment section down below to that question. But let's get started. Shout out to Uncle Hoops. Video to his video will be in the description down below. And let's get to it, man.
Recently on social media, one of the big-time growing trends for NBA fans is the quote-unquote "we're done with the 90s" trend. And this entire movement, the entire gimmick, is about discrediting the 90s through cherry-picked clips, lowlights, and inaccurate facts about how basketball was played in that era.
Watch your boy MJ bring it up with no left. Check this out. What is he doing? Dribbling right out of bounds? Pass the ball. Doug Collins talking about he got fouled. Nah, he just dribbled straight out of bounds. He ain't got no left hand.
Oh, wow.
Man, LeBron would have never did that. We done with the 80s.
I guess you could call that an analysis per se, but in my view, the worst type of sports fan, an NBA fan. And guys like that, they're viewing basketball through the prism of 2024. If there's not 45 threes per game, centers taking threes, a million ISOs, they don't think that is legit basketball. And really this entire trend is just desperation to discredit an entire era. And here's the funny thing. The 1990s, yes, was a decade-long time period, but the players in the 90s, there was crossover from the 80s into the 90s, and the 90s into the 2000s. I mean, how can we ignore that? Guys like Jordan, Malone, Stockton, Shaq, Webber, KG, Vince Carter, Iverson, Ray Allen, Steve Nash, Grant Hill, among other players. They either came in the 80s, 90s, and played in the 2000s, or even 2010s. And all those guys had immense success in all those decades. If you're going to call the 1990s era trash, a guy like Shaquille O'Neal, who was drafted in 93, played 7 years in the 90s. How could that?
It's just weird to me, bro. Cause when I grew up, I like the movement in terms of just trying to get people to think. I guess not really, but I don't know. I just know when I grew up, the 90s was told to me to be the best era of basketball. You missed out on real basketball if you didn't, see the 90s. As a guy growing up in the 2000s, as a kid growing up in the 2000s, as a teenager who grew up in the 2010s, it was just taught to be this really big thing. And now we're seeing this movement of calling it trash. But even back then, there was calling the 60s trash. Like when I started watching basketball, it was already pretty understood that the 60s basketball was dookie. 50s basketball was dookie. So now that timetable as to what the golden era is and what is trash basketball has now shifted over to the point where we're calling the 80s premature basketball. When I'm going to be honest with you, I always thought just in basketball conversations, the modern era of basketball really started in the 80s. So everything 80s and on is fair game. Outside of Kareem, because Kareem did play in the 60s, but he's always in these conversations. But this jump, I think what's catching people off guard is this jump from calling the 80s trash to jumping all the way to calling the 90s trash off rip. And it's crazy to me because I've always said this, man. When we criticize these players, imagine 30. When we're 50 years old and people are going to look at LeBron James and say, oh, that guy really, he wouldn't stand a chance in today's game. When you look at, and then these are coming from people who have never really watched full LeBron James games play. Full LeBron James games. They weren't there in the moment. So I get where old heads are coming from when they see new heads saying the crazy shit. But yeah, I mean, I get it.
That guy dominate all the way to 09, he was an all-star with Phoenix. Looking at Kevin Garnett, his second year in the NBA, 1997, was an all-star. 2013 at 37, also an all-star. Even going further back, John Stockton, drafted 1984, was an all-star in 2000 at age 38. Karl Malone, his teammate, drafted in 85, was an all-star in 2002. If basketball just got so much drastically better after the 90s, how do those players survive in multiple eras?
Trust me, I think you think you're cooking, but I'm telling you the counter argument is, and I'm telling you it's already starting. We done with the 2000s is starting. People will pull back the footage and look at those 2001 Lakers and look at outside of Kobe and Shaq, who were they really playing with for real? That I'm telling you, it's gonna happen. I'm 100% positive it is going to happen at some point. So yeah, I get it. You're essentially trying to point out when is that line, because these players in the 90s did play in the 2000s, and you would have said the 2000s is a weak era. I'm telling you, bro, the counter to that is we still on the 90s right now. Like, well, right now it's time to cook the 90s. The 2000s is coming, I'm telling you.
And looking at Michael Jordan in 2003, his last year in the NBA averaged 26 and 5 on 45% shooting. Now get this, 5 months later after that season, LeBron James, who was a rookie, came into the NBA and put up numbers that were nearly identical to Jordan at age 40. The comparison of these two players is besides the point. What I'm showing you guys is a guy like LeBron James who's still playing in 2024. His rookie season was on par with Jordan, who was drafted in 1984. I mean, think about that. The 03 draft class. Melo, Bosh, Wade, LeBron. They're 5 months removed from Michael Jordan playing pro basketball. Crazy to think about. And looking at one of these so-called fans who craps in the 90s. Look
Kobe
at
and
their
Magic were
breakdown
one
their
season away
basketball
from playing
IQ
with each other.
and is their utter genius when looking at MJ in 1991.
This is the 91 NBA Finals, and for being the best player in the world, Michael Jordan is left wide open. This is James Worthy, one of the all-time great bigs with Jordan Poole-level shot chucking. Scottie Pippen out in transition. I mean, what is he doing, man?
I mean, this right here is the cheapest form of analysis.
So, I think he's going to get into it. But my biggest problem with the whole we done with the 90s movement, chat, is I want to make it clear. I am for criticizing old generations. Because I do believe in evolution, and I do believe the game today and the players today are much skilled than decades past. I do believe that wholeheartedly, right? My biggest problem with this whole movement is just how it started. It didn't start from a 30-minute think piece on Twitter with all the data to back up your claims, multiple pieces of footage, someone watching full games, someone trying to be as objective as possible and show both sides of the argument, someone using empirical data with big sample sizes. It didn't come from a video like that. It didn't come from an article like that. It didn't come from a podcast like that. It came from cherry pick low light footage on TikTok, and people just ran with it. That's my biggest problem with this whole thing, because in any other scenario we would know that this is confirmation bias at its fullest extent. For those who don't know what confirmation bias is when you have a certain bias, certain belief in yourself, and when you see that belief happen to transpire in any sort of way, even though it's a flawed argument, even though there's holes in that logic, just because it happened, boom, this confirms what I'm thinking. So if I think the 90s is ass, I'm going to show you, oh, I seen all this footage of the 90s being ass. See, this is what I'm talking about. And a lot of TikTokers specifically, I'm going to keep it a beat, ran with it. Ran. See, this is what I'm talking about, bro. Finally, I can come out the closet and really talk about how I really felt this whole time because I'm being vindicated with this footage. Finally, man. I've been telling y'all this for years now, and now it's coming out. Y'all thought I was wrong years ago. Y'all been saying I'm dumb this whole time, but now that this footage is out, y'all are cooked. And I'm just like, oh, so this is what's vindicating you. Low lights. And mind you, it works both ways, right? It works both ways. If someone was to say the 60s was an amazing era and all they showed was, you know, Bob Cousy and his 2 highlight plays a game, but they didn't show the 20 shots he was missing. If they just showed Wilt Chamberlain's, I don't know, three half court passes, I don't know, just highlights from the 60s that clearly do not tell the full picture, I would call that bullshit as well. So again, I want to make it clear, it's on both sides of the argument. It just pisses me off. Not really, because I'm not losing sleep at night at all. But it's just worrisome to me that this low light footage, low light clipping is what started all this. And now here we are. Like, come on, bro. Come on, man. We can do better than this as a community. Come on, bro.
Watching one quarter of basketball, seeing some missed shots, some wide open shots, some turnovers. Then taking that one game and extrapolating it for an entire series, entire season, a career, even an entire decade. That right there is a definition of being an idiot. I mean, for example, look at Game 7 2016, Cavs vs. Warriors. By all accounts, one of the best basketball games of all time, with major stakes and high intensity. So for 1 second very quickly, let's keep that same energy and say we're done with the 2010s. I mean, look at that. Klay Thompson, off-ball movement. One of the best shooters of all time. Can't create any space, shoots it, and brick. LeBron James, absolute freight train, 6'8", 260, versus Steph Curry, a midget, gets to the rim, and miss. I mean, look at this great offense. LeBron James, IQ basketball maestro. Gives it to Kevin Love in the post, one-on-one, hook shot, and brick.
But see,
Kyrie Irving.
I get what he's doing, and I would honestly do the same thing. But I think this is the core crux of the question, right? And the core crux of this whole discussion is who started it? Who started it? Because I think We Done with the 90s is a response to people gassing up that era. It's a response to people downplaying current players. Because I do think old heads discredit a lot of new players. They do. They don't play defense. They don't got that dog in them. Man, Shaq, if I was in today's league, I'd average 70. Average 70. Shaq, relax.
Best ball handlers, most skilled players of this era. Gets to the rim, shoots it, and nothing but backboard. LeBron James, yet again, the ISO king in his bag. Drives, posts up, back down, and Kareem, brick, miss. I mean, Steph Curry, best shooter of all time. One of the best guys of this era. He's got to make a shot in this fourth quarter, right? Well, step back three, hits, nothing but backboard. I mean, that was a fluke, right? We know Steph's going to make a shot right here, right? I mean, look, Kevin Love on him, that's easy barbecue chicken. Come on, cook, Steph, cook. And another brick? If I was an absolute dunce, didn't know anything about basketball, I can make the 2016 Finals Game 7 one of the best games of all time. Look like middle school girls basketball. That's what you can do through low lights, cherry picking, and just false information. And look, when it comes to big time finals games, Game 7s, a lot of those games were slugfests with bad possessions. I mean, that fourth quarter Cleveland, They scored 18 points, shot 31%. Golden State.
I think and we may not even need to watch this full video just to get my shit off. I ain't gonna lie. But to me, it's just weird to me, very, very weird to me that sports, not just basketball, but basketball in specific within sports, it has a really tough time accepting two realities: both that evolution exists and that greatness can be separate from evolution, right? So when we talk about, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but if I ask you what the greatest iPhone of all time is, right? You would not tell me it's the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Just because it has the newest technology, just because, you know, it's the fastest CPU ever, the best camera ever, the best screen ever, all of that. If you told me what the greatest iPhone of all time would be, you would tell me it'd be the iPhone 4 because of the impact that it had during this time. You might even tell me the iPhone 6. You might tell me the iPhone 10. iPhone 1 even. Shit, fuck it, right? If I ask you who the greatest scientist of all time is, who not broader question, who the smartest person of all time is, top 10 smartest people ever, you would not just list a bunch of scientists and thinkers from 2024. You wouldn't. You would name a Isaac Newton. You would name a Leonardo da Vinci. You would name a Albert Einstein, right? Even though the things that they discovered during their time are common sense now, Newton's laws of physics are studied in high school. High school students have access and knowledge to what Isaac Newton's universal world-breaking discoveries were in his era. You would not tell me that a high school student today is smarter than Isaac Newton. You just wouldn't, right? If I asked you, music's a little bit harder to prove this. Here's another example. Greatest video game console of all time. You know, you wouldn't just say the PS5 just because it's the latest and greatest. You probably point to a PS2. You probably point to a Xbox 360. You might even point to a Nintendo DS, right? And it's weird because in those categories we can understand that because technology progresses, because as a society we get smarter, we get more advanced, that today's technology is better than last year's technology and the year before that and the year before that. But we can recognize that greatness is it's relative to your era. It's relative to your era. Now, what your era is matters in that discussion as well, but it's relative to era. Because for so Bill Russell's the GOAT then, huh? I honestly think he has a stronger case of being the GOAT than a lot of people give him credit for, to be honest with you. But yeah, it is relative to your era. So in basketball, the old heads, they have a really tough time. Like the old heads. Not a guy like Chilltown Hoops, because shout out to Chilltown. Chilltown, in my opinion, is a really progressive old head when it comes to sports discussions. I don't know about his political beliefs or whatever. But when it comes to the old heads, when they look at the new generation, you know, they look at us and say, man, these guys want to hold a stick to the 90s big men. 90s big men are just so much better, even though the 90s took place 30 years ago. We're closing in on 40 years ago, to be honest with you, right? But also, when it comes to the new kids on the block talking about the old generation, they're just so short-sighted in terms of looking at the game right now that to put up the players of today, they look at the old generation and say, man, that shit was ass, man. I don't even know how y'all lived like this. I don't even know how y'all played like this. Y'all think this was good basketball? Do y'all see what have you seen what Luka's doing? So it's weird. It's a very weird thing on both sides of the argument that both sides have a really tough time kind of grasping both concepts. And maybe it's because sports is both a subjective thing and an objective thing. You know what I'm saying? Like when we talk about these greatest lists of all time, it's more, well, even in the categories that I mentioned, man, all them lists are subjective anyways. I don't know, bro. It's weird with sports. Long story short, it is weird with sports, man.
Even worse, 13 points, 26%. And still despite that, one of the best games of all time. But looking back at the 90s trend, I gotta look at this one video that just trashed Jordan and his era. And if you watch this video, so many lies in only 60 seconds.
Michael Jordan the right-hand bandit. He said he could not go left, and then yesterday, a different creator, he's on this account Esquire Sports, it's pretty cool, he made his own video about the poor quality of basketball in the 1990s, and I've been finding all this really interesting because from what I've seen on TikTok, these games actually do look pretty bad. It does look like MJ can't go left. And the deeper I dug, the more this became apparent. Isaiah Thomas has been quoted saying that the game plan for MJ in his early years was send him left.
Early years.
Thomas a hater. Well, Kenny the Jet Smith said it too. George Gervin revealed that it took a while before Jordan became a consistent scorer with his left.
So stopping it right there, that is the utter state of TikTok with the NBA fans. I mean, this guy in a matter of 30 seconds lied numerous times and omitted things that were vital for this argument. I mean, look at his first claim, that Michael Jordan, it appears, can't go left. And who does he cite? Isaiah Thomas, Kenny Smith, and George Gervin. Now let's look at Kenny Smith first because this one is the most damning lie by this TikToker. Kenny Smith, in talking about Jordan going left and his handle in general, he called it whack. When he called it that, was in college at UNC.
He couldn't handle the rock like in college.
MJ?
No, he couldn't handle the rock. So like even at times I'll be like, we play pickup, I'm like, oh, I got Mike. You're like, cause I knew I'm get up on you.
And then?
And then he's the only guy that I know that his weaknesses that he had at the end of his career was his strengths. His handle was crazy and his jump shot was pure.
If we're gonna cite Kenny Smith for saying Jordan couldn't go left, had a whack handle, why would you ignore that clip only 10 seconds after he said that?
So on top of criticizing the whole generation, I do want to spend separate time talking about Jordan as we move forward, because the claims that Jordan did not have a left hand, boy, there's so much to talk about, right? When we hear Isaiah Thomas say what he said, when we hear Kenny Smith say what he said, it is important to realize that we are talking about early Michael Jordan. And this goes to the both sides of the argument part of it. If you didn't think Michael Jordan didn't have any flaws early in his career, that's what the new kids are saying. Y'all think this guy is so perfect, so flawless that, oh my goodness, a motherfucker calling out his left hand as a weakness is just such a woe to y'all that y'all want to take it personal and shit on the new generation and just take it to the degree. You know what I'm saying? So that's one side of the argument. The other side of the argument, I ain't gonna lie, I'm having a brain fart right now, so I'm gonna just keep on playing the video.
Kind of strange. Now looking at Isaiah, when he says Jordan, it was a game plan to force him left. I don't think that's some massive revelation. They force a guy to go to his...
the other side of the argument is just the new kids trying to, again, cherry pick a young player or any player for having a weakness coming into the game and developing and working on it and fixing it. I don't, like, name me a player who was flawless out the gate. That ass. Name me a player who was flawless out the gate. You might say Luka, defense. Okay? And I believe his 3-point shot might have been... Oh, free throw shooting with Luka. Free throw shooting. LeBron came into the league, had to work on his jump shot. To this day, you can even still make the case that the game plan is to force LeBron James to be a jump shooter, which, same thing with Michael Jordan. That could be your game plan, but I worked on it so much to the point where now I'm a 40% shooter from 3. Make me a jump shooter, I dare you, right? But let's not act like pre-2012, the game plan was not to turn LeBron James into a jump shooter, was not to sag off of LeBron James, because although he was capable of hitting a three, LeBron James was, up until 2011, a 34% shooter from three. His best season was his second year at 35%. His percentage didn't really turn up until 2013, to be honest with you. So yes, it was a game plan to make LeBron James a jump shooter. Until 2012, when he developed a really good post game after working with Hakeem Olajuwon, to the point where his mid-range jump shot became very, very viable, on top of being already one of the greatest slashers of all time, if not the greatest slasher of all time. And then by 2013, on top of having that post game that he developed in 2012, that mid-range game that he developed, on top of being the slasher that he was, now he's shooting 40% from three on 3 threes a game. So same thing with MJ, right? Because of his elite athleticism and his great mid-range game, and relative handles to that time, not to say that it was crazy, but he was able to handle the rock, I feel like, at an above average level for that time. He was able to dominate games. But when it came to winning a championship and the hurdles that he needed to go through, specifically going up against the Detroit Pistons found out, the best way to neutralize this man and to slow him down is to be physical with him and force him to go left, because going left is his weakness. Going left is not a strong suit in his game, and if we had a choice between forcing him left or forcing him right, we're gonna force him left, because typically speaking, players do have a weaker hand, regardless of who you are. And even that resulted in, let's look at, 1988 NBA. 1988 NBA. Detroit Pistons over the Chicago Bulls. Even with these types of game plans, we're still looking at a Michael Jordan who was still able to pull off 27 points a game, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals on 49% shooting from the field. So, this was in 88. If we look at 89 in the Eastern Conference Finals, 30 points a game, 46% from the field. I think it definitely worked, because looking at his regular season numbers during this time, right? Michael Jordan going from a 30-point per game. In 88, he was a 35-point per game scorer to 27. They lowered his points per game from 35 to 27. And then in 89, from 33 to, 30? 29 that I just seen. And lowered his field goal percentage from 54 to 49. Like, they definitely slowed him down. It worked. But all I'm saying is, oh my goodness. God forbid someone has a weakness. Jesus Christ. God forbid someone has a weakness, dog. And also, this is just, it's hypocrisy seeing this from LeBron James fans, when LeBron James specifically has been criticized for not having a bag. But then LeBron fans, and their rebuttal to that is, who the fuck cares about a bag when I'm efficient as fuck and no one can stop me and I have go-to moves, and it's all about productivity, efficiency, this, that, and the third. But when it comes to Michael Jordan, once someone points out that he didn't have a left hand, even though he was still able to pull up these numbers, and even the whole left hand argument is already a hyperbolic statement, now it's oh, you didn't have a bag for real. Oh, you didn't have a bag for real. It's a lot of bad faith arguments going around. This is the most bad faith arguments I've ever seen within the NBA community in a while. And again, it just pisses me off, because we all know what we saw was a bad faith. It was bad evidence as to whatever argument that you wanted to make, and now it's just become an ignorant off. It's, if you're doing this, I'm gonna match your energy and do some ignorant shit back. It's annoying. Let me tell you right now, it's annoying. And also going back to the guy who brought up whatchamacallit, the left hand statistics for Michael Jordan. Number one, he brought up one game in 1991. But no one likes to bring up this video right here. And shout out to this dude.
Graph you're looking at.
This is D Lee 43. He got into the fire with all this we done with the 90s talk, and did his own research with a bigger sample size of empirical data. It wasn't all of Michael Jordan's prime, but it was definitely more than one game. And these are his findings.
That shows some of the greatest scorers of all time and their frequency of driving the ball left and driving the ball right.
There's I think there's one video before this that's better. Hold on. I'm pretty sure I saved it. One second.
The graph
chat.
you're
One
looking.
second, chat. One second, chat. Let's see. Ooh, where'd it go? Oh, here you go. Shout out to D-Lee43, bro.
Guys, I think the allegations might be true. Why are you predominantly using your right hand from the left wing?
No, but I tell you what, I challenge you to prove to me that he couldn't go left on a consistent basis for a 15.
Is it true that Michael Jordan did not have a left hand? And I'm not talking over a single game basis or even a single series. Just like Unc said, over a 15-game career, did Michael Jordan not have a left hand?
Career.
So I'm going to show you exactly what I found. Not only does this prove that Michael Jordan had a left hand, he is indeed one of the best drivers of the basketball in NBA history. So I looked up Michael Jordan tracking data, and on this first link, I found a Reddit post that has tracking data on Michael Jordan's drives, what side of the court he drove on, all that type of stuff. So what I'm about to show you is Michael Jordan's shot chart from 1990 to 1992. We're talking about a 126 game sample size.
So this is 1989 to 1992, okay? Just so everyone is aware, playoff games from 1989 to 1992, I believe is the sample size. Again, it's not the biggest sample size that you can have, but it is still a bigger sample size than the two videos that this video is referring to, who only looked at literally one game, okay?
Are you ready for this? So here's the shot chart. Pretty even attempts and efficiency from both the left and the right side of the court. But what about the actual drives? Out of isolation, Michael Jordan drove left more than he drove right in those 126 games. Not only that, he attacked.
So let's look at the numbers. Pull-up jumper. So he went to his pull-up to the right way more than pull-up to the left. In terms of attacking the basket, he attacked the basket way more driving left than driving right. We're looking at over 100 more plays of Michael Jordan attacking left than attacking right. Now, I will say, looking at this data, though, it looked like he was a little bit, he was more effective still driving right than driving left. The field goal percentage is about the same, but points per possession is 1.57 attacking right than attacking left. But 1.39 points per possession, I don't think that's a bad number going left anyways. Not enough to say that it is a weakness for Jordan to go left.
Attacked the basket more when driving left. He pulled up more going to his right. Now, one thing to note for sure, he turned the ball over a lot more attacking the basket with his left hand. 34 turnovers going left, driving to the basket. 1 turnover driving right.
Now that's crazy.
Despite that, his points per possession, driving right and driving left, are still really high. So over this 126 game sample size, Michael Jordan shot 63% when driving to the basket for points per possession of 1.49. So I think it's pretty clear that not only did Michael Jordan have a left, he was a very versatile driver of the basketball. But it's not enough to just look at his raw numbers. Let's compare him to some of the other great scorers in recent NBA history. Let's start with LeBron. I scrolled down the drive, direction, and I took all this data for pretty much all the seasons I could for his career that's in this database. It goes up to 2005. And I put it into a spreadsheet along with 4 other great scorers, Kobe, Harden, Steph, and Luka Doncic. So here's what I found. LeBron James drives left 56% of the time throughout his career up until 2005. Curry, for his entire career, is at 55%, and they're the only 2 out of these 5 with above 50% drive frequency to the left. Harden, who's the only left-handed player, actually has the lowest frequency driving to his left at 42%. LeBron also turns the ball over the least out of these guys when he's driving to his left. LeBron only drives right 40% of the time. And this makes sense because he's actually left-handed. He just shoots right-handed.
Yeah.
This makes sense when you plot a player's percentage of driving left and a percentage of driving right. It's pretty clear that all of these great scorers favor a direction. I mean, besides Luka. And we see somewhat of a similar trend with turnover percentage where the side that the player prefers to drive on, he has a lower turnover percentage than the side that he does not prefer to drive on. And here's the difference in field goal percentage. In general, NBA players, even the greatest scorers of all time, will be better on one side. So not only do we know that Michael Jordan 100% had a left hand, we know that, like most great scorers in NBA history, he favored another side of the court. I'm gonna be honest, I felt for Uncle when I saw how frustrated he was because he watched all of these games. He saw Michael Jordan be versatile with his left hand. He saw it with his
So again, shout out to DLEE43. I know he had a follow-up video as well. Y'all can go ahead and watch that on his page. Now you might be saying, BSOLZ, man, here you go, stat watching again. Whoa, joke's on you, buddy. I actually watched Michael Jordan games this past weekend, full Michael Jordan games. I watched the 1993 NBA Finals. I watched the 1992 NBA Finals. I watched the first half, I will say that, the first half of a 1988 game. My God, that footage was cheeks in terms of quality. And I also watched Michael Jordan in his Wizards year. I watched another game in 96, and I watched a game from Michael Jordan in his Wizards years because they got rid of illegal defense in 2001, so 2003 would be the only sample size that we would have of Michael Jordan playing in the most modern era without illegal defense. And here are some of my findings, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get nerdy real quick when it comes to this basketball shit. Number one, Michael Jordan was really good at moving off the ball. I don't think y'all understand how good Michael Jordan was at moving off the ball, off of pin downs, cutting to the basket, leaking out for the fast break. Like, I'm telling you right now, seeing how ball dominant perimeter players are in today's game, from Anthony Edwards to SGA to LeBron, and even LeBron, you would consider LeBron right now more off ball than he's ever has been in his career since Miami, right? When you look at literally everyone outside of maybe LeBron and Steph Curry, it is really, really refreshing to see how good Michael Jordan was coming, moving off ball. He damn near looked like mid-range Steph Curry out there, bro. Like the way he was moving, he looked like mid-range Steph, like mid-range Ray Allen. Like it's crazy how great Michael Jordan was moving off ball. And this is in all eras, by the way. The game back then was also much more it was around inside out instead of outside in. I feel like right now it still might be inside out today, but much more half court play. Not a lot of high pick and roll with great perimeter players. The offense ran through the post. It didn't matter if he had great perimeter offensive weapons. Like I was watching the Bulls play, and in my modern eyes, if I have Michael Jordan, if I have Scottie Pippen, I'm running pick and roll, right? I'm just running straight ISOs for Michael Jordan and Scottie. But no, they had the triangle offense, and they would run the one of the first things that they would do on offense would be, passing it down to Horace Grant or passing it down to Bill Cartwright, passing it down to Luke Longley in the post. They would run their off-ball action, and depending on how the defense reacts, they would read and react, right? So yeah, much more inside out than outside in. And I think it's also why Michael Jordan was so dominant in that era was because of his post play, right? In an era where post play was still very prevalent because of illegal defense, because of just how the game was taught. When a guard comes in and is able to be a high level post player on top of giving you the perimeter advantages that Michael Jordan as a 6'6" freaky athletic guard gives you, he was a broken player in that era. like he really was. In terms of his passing, when I watched Michael Jordan play, it never felt like Michael Jordan had this crazy tunnel vision and was an unwilling passer. Maybe in 88, when I seen some of that footage, he was less willing. But by 91, 92, 93, because of illegal defense and just how the offense ran, the best play might have just been a Michael Jordan ISO, but he was never a non-willing passer. And he was really good at passing and making plays midair. Like, I don't really see anyone in today's league that does that, but Michael Jordan's ability to pass out of shots in midair was kind of crazy. Like, if they helped out on a Michael Jordan, if they doubled on a Michael Jordan pull-up midi, because of how much elevation he had, he will be able to like wrap around pass down low to Luke Longley, who's now open because they doubled on a mid-range. And he did it often. He did it often, bro. So I'm telling you right now, I truly don't think passing is a weakness in Michael Jordan's game. It was just for that time. It was, I genuinely think the best course of action was for Michael Jordan to score than to pass. And speaking of that mid-range, really, I understand it sounds like common sense, but you really got to see it for yourself. Really, really good at hitting that mid-range J. Off the dribble, off the catch, any angle. Really, really efficient. And most of his buckets came from that mid-range, bro. Like, it's actually insane. Because when you think of Michael Jordan, you didn't think he'd have a go-to unstoppable move like a sky hook or Dirk's one-legged. But it's kind of like when you see Kevin Durant today just pull up in your grill, pull up in your face, even on a good contestant, he just drains that shit. I seen a lot of that with Michael Jordan, right? And he was just automatic in the mid-range. It was actually crazy. Even on good defense. That's just how skilled he was in a mid-range. And also, I think it's important to understand when watching Michael Jordan, because of how much he moved off ball, and just the way that he played, you're not gonna see a tap 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 dance from Michael Jordan. You're not gonna see a James Harden-esque isolation play where he's just in the perimeter, just sizing, like you know, you see that from Kobe. You're not gonna see that from Mike. You see that from SGA. You're not gonna see that from Mike. Michael Jordan gets to his spots in 2-3 dribbles or less. The only times I would see Michael Jordan dribble more than four or more times will be either in a fast break or when he's just in the top of the key setting up the offense and trying to set up the drive, right? And I'm not talking about sizing up the defender. I'm just talking about, all right, everyone's in the position. Now let me go to my move. He will get into his move. I kid you not, in 2 to 3 less dribbles. So yeah, you will not see these hella long drives going to the left the same way you would not see hella long drives to the right. That just was not his play style. And he had a really fast first step, dog. And that's also why he didn't really need that many moves. Michael Jordan's first step is crazy. Crazy. When you combine that first step with how efficient he is in a mid-range and how high he elevates on his jump shots, boy, it is tough to guard that man. It is tough. It is tough to guard Michael Jordan, bro. It's tough. And last but not least, when it comes back, going back to the playmaking. I also think something that I've seen with 90s basketball, and this is why I think I would not have had a problem if we're just criticizing the era in good faith, but just the way we went about it was crazy. The role players were cheeks, bro. I think the role players were good defensively. A lot of them were good defensively. But offensively, them boys was cheeks. And I would even say them boys was cheeks so bad offensively that it kind of upped how good the defense was because of how easy it was to help off of said players. Right? I think the 1-of-1 still stood out. When I seen Clyde Drexler play, he still stood out. When I seen Michael Jordan play, he stood out. When I seen Scottie Pippen play, he stood out. Not as much as you would think though, but he still stood out. Yeah, they still stood out. Charles Barkley, he stood out. But the role players, I'm telling you right now, like I saw a lot of plays where Michael Jordan made the right read, right? You know, they came for the double. He made a in the midair pass to an open shooter, open perimeter player. But because of the fact that shooting wasn't as emphasized back then, it would just be a brick. They would shoot it, and it would be a low percentage mid-range jump shot that they would take because they were open, and they would just brick it. So I would love to see Michael Jordan in today's era just also playing with more skilled players. How many assists he would average playing in today's era when you pass it out? Like look at the Thunder right now. How the Thunder set up. You double SGA, he passes it out 3 times out of 4. You're passing out to a 40% shooter from 3. I would love to see Michael Jordan have access to that type of help offensively. I would love to. I would love to. And same thing with the spacing, right? Because players ran double big back then. It was, I don't know, like it was just easier to help. It was just easier to help back then. It was a different type of help. I won't say easier because illegal defense was a thing, but it was just a different type of help. And yeah, 90s basketball, I wouldn't say it's ass. It's different. And I do think the skill level is apparent between today's role players and the role players back then. I think the average role player back then, average role player today would cook an average role player back then. But I also don't think vice versa, that the stars back then would just be cheeks today. I don't think that at all. Yeah, I want to say 90s basketball is ass. It's definitely primitive in terms of the offenses that they ran, and I honestly don't even blame them. But yeah, it was cool. It was cool. I think it's just important to acknowledge that, you know, we can both up the current generation while not looking down on the past generation. I think that's just a important thing to understand. And last but not least, before we close out the video, I want to just tell y'all, after watching a lot of footage with MJ, how I feel like MJ would play in today's era, in today's league. So in this hypothetical, we're just plopping 1993 Michael Jordan into today's league, right? So for those who do not know 1993 Michael Jordan, this is the last leg of the this is the last year of the first three-peat. Averaged 33 points a game, 6 assists, 7 rebounds, 2.8 steals, 50% from the field, 35% from 3 on a non-shortened 3-point line, on 2.9 attempts a game, 84% from the line, got to the line 87% of the shot, got to the line 7 times a game, and then in the playoffs, was shooting 39% on 4 threes a game, 35 points a game, 6 assists, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block a game. This is the Michael Jordan that I chose to plot in today's era because I personally believe this is Jordan's apex in terms of his skill combined with his athleticism and experience. I do believe this is Jordan's apex. In terms of play style in today's league, I think Michael Jordan, the best way I would put it is take Jimmy Butler. Just bear with me. Take Jimmy Butler, right? Make him 6'6". Give him Anthony Edwards' athleticism and his first step, right? Make him a much better finisher at the rim, much more active off ball, and a much better mid-range scorer. I think that's who Michael Jordan would be in today's league. Seriously, I think that's what Michael Jordan would be in today's league. Now, you might be asking, BSOLZ, why Jimmy Butler? The reason why I chose Jimmy Butler was because I was looking at, because Michael Jordan, even though he shot 3 threes a game, I still wouldn't consider that as a 3-point threat in today's game. But Jimmy Butler is a star wing in today's league that is highly effective without relying on the three-point shot. How he does it is by making the hustle plays. How he does it is by, when he's on, obviously, dominating the mid-range, playmaking, being a good defender, cutting to the basket, you know? So, yeah, Jimmy Butler would be, and the dribble package as well. Like, Jimmy Butler doesn't have like, he kind of has it, but similar to Michael Jordan, when you watch Jimmy Butler play, a lot of his baskets come through in the half court, 3 dribbles or less. He's using his athleticism, and he's using his leaping ability to finish over folks. And I think Michael Jordan would be similar in that way. I think his handle would be similar to Jimmy Butler in today's league. But yeah, now you might be saying, BSOLZ, I mean, how good is that player? He'd be Jimmy Butler in today's league? No, he would not be Jimmy Butler. He would be Jimmy Butler with Anthony Edwards' athleticism and his first step, with a much better mid-range jump shot, right? A much better mid-range jump shot, can finish at the rim much better than current Jimmy Butler, and moves off ball way more than Jimmy Butler. That's a completely different player, and that player that I mentioned right there, in my opinion, is still a top 4 player in the league. And if we take into consideration playoff elevation, I would still say that the only dude matching that would probably be Jokic right now. And you would just have to be a suck. Luka's there, but the two-way argument is not just I'm telling you, that player, that's a completely different argument between the Jason Tatum and Luka Doncic conversations right now that I just mentioned. Jimmy Butler, Ultra Instinct Jimmy Butler, compared to current Luka, that's a completely different conversation. If you can't visualize that, another comparison that I think would work would be a 6'6" Kawhi Leonard without the 3-ball. Not as good defensively, but still really good at playing the passing lanes. A much better slasher, moves much better off ball, and is a better mid-range scorer. Take that for what you will. This is going to be the last video I do on We Done With the 90s. Once again, I know I didn't even watch this full video. Shout out to Uncut Hoops for his video as well. Just a lot to talk about when it comes to discussion. Just, talking about the differences between eras, bad faith arguments, the chicken or the egg, how Michael Jordan would play in today's league, and media literacy too, man. With that being said, if y'all enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, follow me on Twitch, and I'm out, man. Peace.